Here's the thing about Long John Silver's. If you grew up in the US in the 70s and 80s, it dominated seafood to a degree that almost no restaurant ever has. But fast forward to today and the chain is left with hardly a few hundred locations. So what happened? Way back in 1929, Jerry Lederer opened a tiny hamburger stand called the White Tavern Shop in Shelbyville, Kentucky. Shelbyville wasn't exactly a booming market, and opening a restaurant right as the Great Depression hit doesn't sound smart in hindsight, but simple, inexpensive food actually worked surprisingly well, and his stand grew to 13 locations. Then the Second World War happened and wiped out most of what Jerry had built. After the war, he reorganized what was left under a new company named Jericho, and launched Jerry's Five and Dime, which focused on roast beef sandwiches years before Arby's. The venture failed, so about a year later, Jerry pivoted back to hamburgers, and over the next 15 years, he grew the business back to 6 locations. When Lederer died in 1963, the company passed to Warren Rosenthal, who had started as a restaurant manager and worked his way up. Rosenthal was more willing to experiment, and by the late 1960s, he and franchisee Jim Patterson realized that while burgers were everywhere, seafood, especially fish and chips, was not. In 1969, they opened the first Long John Silver's in Lexington, Kentucky. The idea was to take a coastal-style fish and chips concept and drop it into inland America, where people didn't have many alternatives. At the time, fast food itself was still expanding rapidly, and a seafood-focused chain felt genuinely different. The idea worked almost immediately. Jericho had franchising experience, operational know-how, and cash from having gone public, so when demand showed up, they could actually meet it. Within a few years, Long John Silver's had hundreds of locations, and by 1979, it had crossed the 1,000 store mark. Throughout the 80s, the growth just kept going. By the end of the decade, they were pushing close to 1,500 locations and had become the largest fast food seafood chain in the country by a wide margin. At its peak, Long John Silver's controlled 66% of the out-of-home seafood market in the US, an absurd level of dominance for a restaurant chain. Families used to enjoy the fish and chips, the hush puppies, and pecan pies. The kids especially loved the Crispies, those small fried batter bits that came with meals. But by the late 80s, cracks were starting to show. Seafood was becoming more available in grocery stores, and higher-end chains like Red Lobster were also expanding. At the same time, fish prices were rising, which squeezed margins in a way burger chains didn't have to deal with. The 80s also saw a broader economic slowdown, and overall, the company began to falter. Quick pause. If you're enjoying the road down nostalgia, please hit like and subscribe to our channel to help us reach 5,000 subs. Thanks. In 1989, Long John Silver's went through a leveraged buyout worth about $620 million, roughly $1.6 billion today. A group of executives and investment firms took the company private, funding most of the purchase with debt that landed directly on the company's balance sheet. Now, if you're aware of the story of Red Lobster, Chuck E. Cheese's, Toys R Us, Sears, Sports Authority, TGI Fridays, and other firms that were taken over in leveraged buyouts, you probably know what's about to come next. The new owners decided to focus entirely on Long John Silver's, instead of spreading attention across multiple smaller restaurant concepts Jericho had accumulated over the years. By 1991, Long John Silver's was the whole business, to the point that the company even changed its name to match. On paper, the 90s were okay as sales kept growing and franchises kept opening. But in the background, the debt never really stopped hanging over their heads. Selling off the other restaurant concepts helped pay some of it down, but it also removed any buffer if things went wrong. The company was running hard just to stay afloat. In 1998, the massive debt on their balance sheets finally caught up. Long John Silver's filed for bankruptcy with about $457 million in liabilities and only $329 million in assets. Management insisted that sales and profits were growing, but that didn't matter to the creditors. A year later, the brand was acquired by A&W's parent company, and in 2002, both chains were bought together by Yum Brands for around $320 million. Under Yum, Long John Silver's never really found its footing. Yum tried co-branding, often pairing Long John Silver's with A&W or other chains, which made sense from a real estate and cost perspective but diluted the experience. The nautical theme was part of the appeal, and splitting a building with another brand made it feel less distinct. More importantly, the numbers didn't improve. Store counts fell every year under Yum's ownership, dropping from over 1,200 to under 1,000 for the first time since the 70s. Around this same period, public attitudes toward food were changing. Fried fish, hush puppies, and deep-fried chicken weren't exactly aligning with where consumer preferences were heading in the late 80s and 90s. Long John Silver's tried introducing grilled and baked items, and some customers liked them, but it created a split. People who wanted healthier food didn't fully trust the brand, and people who loved the old menu didn't want it changed too much. That tension came to a head in 2013, when the Center for Science in the Public Interest labeled Long John Silver's Big Catch Meal the worst restaurant meal in America.
Alice, and the Consumer Group Center for Science in the Public Interest just announced their worst restaurant meal today. It says the winner is a meal from Long John Silver's.
The numbers were hard to ignore. Over 1,300 calories, 3,700 milligrams of sodium, and 33 grams of trans fat, which was more than 16 times the American Heart Association's recommended daily limit. The publicity was brutal, and it stuck. The company responded by eliminating trans fats from its menu and leaning harder into grilled options. But the damage to perception was already done. This was happening while another, quieter problem kept getting worse. Fish was becoming expensive. Not just a little more expensive, but multiple times more expensive than chicken on a per-serving basis. In fast food, where margins are thin and price sensitivity matters, that's a huge disadvantage. Chicken chains exploded during the same period. Places like Chick-fil-A and Raising Cane's scaled rapidly, in part because chicken became cheaper over time, not more expensive. Long John Silver's didn't have that luxury. Even McDonald's Filet-O-Fish became harder to justify as fish prices rose. When your core ingredient costs 3 or 4 times as much as what competitors are using, there's only so much pricing and portioning can do. There were still bright spots though. Lent remained a massive seasonal driver, with sales jumping more than 80% on Fridays during the season, and seafood sales spiking even higher on Ash Wednesday. In 2017 alone, Long John Silver's reportedly sold more than 2 million pounds of seafood during Lent. They leaned into promotions, church partnerships, and even goofy campaigns like Talk Like a Pirate Day, which doubled as charity fundraisers. But none of that fixed the underlying economics. Yum Brands eventually decided to focus on its bigger, more successful chains and sold Long John Silver's in 2011 to a group of franchisees and investors under the name LJS Partners. However, the chain has continued to slide, closing more than 150 U.S. locations in the last few years, bringing the total down to under 500 restaurants nationwide. Last year, the chain decided to rebrand away from the seafood-only image to focus more on their chicken offerings. Instead of the iconic yellow fish logo, it will now feature a chicken, accompanied by the words "chicken plus seafood" to emphasize a new dual focus for the menu. I'm not sure how the new strategy will pan out, but for now, Long John Silver's has become a pale shadow of what it used to be. Do you have fond memories of eating Crispies at Long John Silver's as a kid? Drop a comment below and let me know, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more such videos.